I've waited 100 years, and I'd wait 1,000,000 more for you. Nothing prepared me for the privilege of being yours would do. If I had only felt the warmth within your touch, if I had only seen how you smile when you blush, or how you curl your lip when you concentrate enough, I would have known what I was living for all along.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Morning Coffee with your host, Rick Alexander. You can follow me at @RickAlexander_ or at Lionheart Radio on Instagram. And that intro music was provided by Brittany Taylor. She's at Barbell Brittany on Instagram. And if you want to bug her to make more music for us, I would be okay with it. She produces, she makes all the music here for us, all the songs, and sometimes covers, sometimes originals. But they're always amazing, and I really think they kick this thing off with a good vibe. And so if you're interested or if you like that, then head over to her Instagram page, give her a follow, let her know you like the music. Today I wanted to share something that is more personal, just something that I've gone through. And the only reason I think that I want to share this is because I know that if I've gone through this, that I cannot be the only person out there. And sort of a little bit of advice that's so simple, but very profound and really helped get me on the right track. So, sometimes we end up in our lives, we end up going through the motions a lot. And, first of all, let me put this out there. You're under no circumstance, you're under no obligation to just go through the motions in life. That's not a thing. We feel like we are sometimes. We feel like we have all these things we have to do. But at the end of the day, if it's not resonating with you, if you're not doing activities that make you feel alive, that you actually want to be doing with your time, you're really under no obligation to go through the motions of anything. And once you stop going through the motions and stuff, you start to realize that life is a little bit different than you thought it was. Like, it can be more. It can mean more. Your days can mean more. They don't all have to blend together. You can actually remember a Wednesday or a Thursday, the last time it happened. And so sometimes we go through the motions, our whole life ends up blending together. Then we get down the road and we look back and we're like, where the fuck did all that time go? And really, at the end of the day, what happened is we were just going through the motions because we got comfortable, because we got complacent, because things were expected of us, because we thought there were things we should do. But you're under no obligation to go through those motions. But what I found in my life is that I was going through the motions a lot. And I was sort of doing things out of obligation, even though that obligation was essentially self-imposed by me. What I realized is sometimes we have a tendency, if we don't take enough agency and enough control over our lives, we sort of agree to things and we take on things and they seem like good opportunities at the time, and we end up getting kind of far from where we actually want to be. And then we look around and we're like, I don't really know where we are. Well, that happened to me maybe a couple years ago. And it happened to me throughout my life, but a couple years ago, I kind of came to that realization. And then about a year ago, I came to the realization that all of this disconnection that I was feeling from my life was due to the fact that deep down, I had an incredible amount of self-loathing. And in fact, I, to my core, hated myself. And I think a lot of people have a lot of self-loathing, and it's sort of pervasive in our culture. And it's hard to figure out why, and it's also hard to figure out how to change that. Well, if you're feeling any kind of disconnection in your life, you feel disconnected from the things that you're doing, it's all blending together, you could take it or leave it. Some self-loathing could be at the core of that, and it could be that you're simply just kind of going through the motions, that you're not taking on things that you actually feel passionate about. And so when you look at your entire life, of course, you don't feel passionate about it. And I think this idea of having apathy about our lives is like one of the things that's the most to blame for unhappy people. Well, at some point you realize if you don't like yourself or if you don't like your life, you have to do something about it. And it can be hard to figure out what it is you should do. There are a lot of things you could do, but you have to start figuring out, well, what should I be doing if what I'm doing now is not getting me there. And I realized like there was this whole life that I wanted to live and these expectations I had of myself, and I wasn't actually doing them. So one of the things that I did is I started figuring out my core values. Like, what do I really believe? What do I really value? Not what I think I should value, not what other people say value, like the ones you always hear, like integrity or honor, or, if they're important to you, that's fine. But what I find is that those values really have to have some kind of resonance within you. And then the most important exercise that I probably did is I listed down all of the ways that I was actually living outside of alignment with my values. And this is something that the Clarity Academy is actually going to go through this exercise. But if it's something that you want to do, it's pretty easy. You just put down your values. Now, there's a lot of things that go into creating your values and figuring out what those are. But you essentially put your values down at the top of the page, and then you list all of the ways that you're out of alignment with your values. Now, the reason that this is so profound and so important is because you realize if you value something and you're doing something that's outside of alignment with your values, then it's no wonder that you're feeling disconnection and discontent toward yourself or your life, because you're not acting in a way that you actually value, that you'd actually want to act should you have the choice. But because we're going through the motions, because we don't take agency over our lives, the thing that tends to happen is that we end up doing things based on the environment that we're in, based on, whatever urges, whatever's motivating you to do something at the time. But if it's not motivated by you and your values, well, then you end up living in a way that you don't value. And so, of course, that is at the core of your self-loathing, of your disconnection from your life. And that's an exercise I really think everybody should do, if for no other reason than to shine a spotlight on your life and the things that you're doing, and at least make yourself aware of things as you're doing them. Because the worst part is when you look at your life and you feel disconnected from it, and you don't particularly like yourself, then you have to figure out why. And you have to shine a spotlight on those reasons. And you have to be super honest with yourself. Because here's the deal. If you don't do these things, if you don't make yourself aware of where you are out of alignment with what you really want, you're going to lie to yourself. Because we have all of these psychological coping mechanisms which make ourselves feel better about ourselves, even if we're not really where we want to be. And all of those are going to happen implicitly, which means you have to explicitly try to figure out where you're out of alignment. And of course, once you do figure out where you're out of alignment, then comes the really hard part, which is actually starting to act in accordance with your values. And I heard somebody say something to me which really did change my life. It's sort of become a theme, and it's so simple. And this is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. It's so simple and so easy to do. For me, it really does mean something. It might mean something for you as well, but it's just, I have to show up for myself. And I wrote it on a whiteboard. It says show up for yourself. And what does that mean? That means living in accordance with your values. It means making the tough decision based on your value. The easiest way to think about this is sometimes when people are in a relationship and one person cheats and then they feel like shit about cheating, the reason they feel like shit about it is because they acted on impulse, but they lived outside of their values. Well, that same thing is manifesting itself in our lives in tons and tons of ways at micro levels, which we're not aware of. And that's why we do this list. We come up with this list, we figure out how we need to live a little bit better and a little bit differently, and then we show up for ourselves. We do the work, we do the thing. We make sure that we're living in accordance with how we actually want to be living, with the things that we actually value. So my question for you today is, where aren't you showing up for yourself? How could you show up for yourself better? Because at the end of the day, you're gonna look back, and if all you have is a bunch of Monday through Sundays that run together and you can't tell one from the other, and you have apathy about your life and the things that you are doing, you're really gonna have nobody to blame but yourself. The way that you can change that, though, is you start showing up for yourself. Start figuring it out. Start making the things that you want a reality by first making yourself aware of the things that you want and the kind of life that you want to live. And then the last thing that I want to say is that values are complicated. A value doesn't just change the way that the things that come into your life, but it actually changes the lens through which you view everything else. And that's what makes values so important. That's what makes identifying them so important. And it's such a complicated thing. If you guys are interested in learning more about how to explore your values and exercises around this, I would encourage you to jump in the next Clarity Academy, which is going to launch in March, because that is a huge part of it, is figuring out your values and how to live in accordance with them and really what that means. And so if you're interested in more work, I would say to jump into the Clarity Academy, hit me up again at Rick Alexander _, and we can talk about getting you in the next program. But at a bare minimum, just take out a sheet of paper, figure out what you value, and then figure out why you're not living in accordance with that thing. I hope this helped. This really did change my life when I took it to heart and I started showing up for myself. I love you guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow on Morning Coffee.
I wrote